Yeah. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Millennial Gen Z in Korea, our executive webinar. What I'm going to do is I am going to wait a couple minutes until more people fill into our webinar, and then I will start this webinar very, very soon. And for those of you returning to our webinar, I see some of you, this is not your first time, so welcome back. Very, very happy to see you again. And for those of you who are joining us the first time, welcome. And hopefully this will be a interesting webinar for you. And as Lauren has just shared in our chat, that if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function in Zoom. And if you wanted to just engage us, then you can also use the chat box as well. And while we wait for the remaining people to fill into our webinar, so if you are interested in previous sessions, feel free to visit our YouTube channel. We have all our past webinar, as well as some additional leadership and also HR related content on our YouTube channel. Just go to our YouTube channel, go to YouTube, search for RDI Worldwide. You should be able to find us pretty easily. And yeah, be sure to check it out, subscribe, and let us know also what kind of content that you would like to see more in the future. Then we'll try our very, very best to fulfill those requests. Okay, so I think most of the attendees have signed in now, so I'm just going to start the webinar at this moment. So again, welcome to our monthly Millennial and Gen Z in Korea webinar, where we share with you some of the trends, news, and insight regarding Gen Z and Millennial in Korea. And also we like to give a little bit of commentary from us to give you our take on some of the trends and news, and also what are some of the recommendations that we would like to give people who are working with Gen Z and Millennials in Korea. So this month's topic is remote working. So remote working is a concept that has really heated up since 2019 and throughout the 2020 and 2021 as well. So a couple of things that we're going to touch on today is, what are the trends? Do we think that remote working is going to go away, or is it going to stay with us for the foreseeable future as a new ways of working? And also, we will look at some of the trends regarding Gen Z. What are some of the future focus that leaders and even a professional working in HR could be paying some attention to when it comes to remote working? So remote working, I suppose for most of us here today that we probably would have a chance to be impacted by remote working one way or the other. It is very hard to find somebody who hasn't been touched by remote working as a concept. Either they themselves have experienced remote working, or they have managed or worked with people who are remote working. So if we look at remote working as a new ways of working, one interesting bit of a data that we found is who in Korea particularly, which industries are most impacted or most familiar with remote working, so to speak. So this is something that from the Statistical Research Center in Korea. So unsurprisingly, finance and insurance, those are the industry who are most familiar, who have implemented or were planning to implement remote work as a new ways of working. Unsurprisingly, accommodation, food service, hospitality is the least ready to implement remote working, simply because of the nature of the work itself. Manufacturing as well, simply because of the nature of the setup when it comes to that particular industry. So as you can see, a lot of the service industry are leading the way when it comes to remote working. And so this is a survey done in 2020. What we got really curious is, as the situation with COVID-19 worldwide is starting to change, is remote working here to stay? Are companies going to go back to the ways of working, or are they going to remain remote working? And if so, what are some of the things that we need to watch out for? So if we look at remote working as a product of a situation that is accelerated by the COVID-19 event, simply because people are unable to go to work physically. Perhaps if we look at the event of COVID-19, then we will have a little bit of understanding on how can we, if we wanted to see remote working continue, or if you're not supporting remote working one way or the other, it will be interesting to see what are some of the things that Korean companies have done when it comes to COVID-19, and when it comes to, and we can see a little bit more regarding how remote working is being implemented in this country, and gain some insight on what are some of the things that we need to do if we want to make remote working to become a normal thing that we do at the workplace. So this is what we found quite interesting, right? From the same research that show which industry are more friendly to remote working, we also find that some of the policy change due to COVID-19 by Korean companies immediately when the pandemic has kicked in, then these are some of the policy that companies has changed when it comes to work in the workplace. Compulsory face mask is something that I think I don't need to explain. Some companies have put into the policy of employee or visitor need to wear face masks. But what I wanted to focus on is a little bit more interesting is the at the bottom. So when it comes to policy of flexible working, so the definition here of flexible working is it includes flexible working hours, and also so this is a definition of flexible working, right? Flexible working in this survey means allowing employee to flexibly change the work hours or the place where they work, so such as remote working. So when it comes to policy change, we find it quite surprising to see that flexible working actual policy only need less than 10% of companies in Korea have a policy in place when it comes to regarding remote working and flexible working. As versus same thing with non-face-to-face reporting, only 16% of companies have a ready policy and guideline when it comes to non-face-to-face reporting, so which is also related to remote working. And this becomes a little bit less surprising to us when we looked at a survey done by Job Korea, when they asked company in Korea, like, what are their priorities when it comes to remote working, right? For companies who have actually implemented remote working, what are some of their priorities? And for us, we find that the top priority, right? Number one priority for most companies is they want to make sure that they have an online meeting system ready. So this is more tech, hardware related kind of priorities for them to work with. And the second priority for them is they want to make sure that they have a collaboration tools are in place. For example, a tool such as MS Team or Slack. So those are the top two priorities. And a distant third priority for them is the work hour arrangement. So this kind of on the back of this data of company, a lot of the time when it comes to remote working, there is not a comprehensive work policy or guideline when it comes to letting managers and leaders know, like, how are we supposed to be working when it comes to remote working. So what we see, the trend of implementing remote working is the technology and systems usually is a priority over policies and procedure at this stage when it comes to remote working. And this is a little bit alarming to us when it comes to working with people, and particularly when it comes to working with Gen Z in Korea. So a recent survey done by Sanamin, which is a job searching portal, a work-related product, professional portal, find that 75% of Gen Z in Korea would prefer remote working from a survey that they have done. And from a similar type of survey that they have done, that a company do recommend, do realize that they have a productivity increase of 12 to 13% when it comes to remote working. And when it comes to Gen Z, the personal view of remote working is actually quite interesting when it comes to employee engagement and also attracting talent and candidates. So the Gen Z view on remote working is that they feel that it increased their productivity and the efficiency. And they also like the two facts that's quite interesting. It's a little bit more culturally involved, I suppose. They think that it reduced the personal expense because less commute, and also they don't need to worry too much about buying clothes anymore, because when you go to work, you need to dress nicely. And the third one is this one is more specific to Korea culture, that they have less meaningless interaction. So in their definition of meaningless interaction, more specifically to the concept of huesik, which is the team dinner, evening dinner that usually involving the team that they work with. So because of the social distancing restriction, and also because they're working remotely, they do appreciate the fact that they are spending less personal time at work when it comes to the dinner that they have to go to, and also they can have more time to do the personal things that they like to do after work. And the fourth one is what I wanted to talk about, want to focus on, is for a lot of the Gen Z, they think that having the options, at least the option to remote work for a company, indicated that is a good place to work. That is a place that is an ideal workplace for Gen Z in Korea. So that's a little bit related to employer branding, right? As an employer, they see that, oh, this company has an option to remote work. If yes, then they would consider that, okay, this is a good workplace. If no, then they would have the mindset of, okay, this workplace maybe is a little bit too stubborn or too traditional. So these are something that when in our view of is remote working a thing that is going to stay going forward? We think yes, simply because of the fact that Gen Z have a very, very positive view when it comes to remote working. And in that view specifically is linked to their view, their image, the perception of employer branding. So we do believe that remote working is something that will be quite important when it comes to the element of employer branding to attracting the ideal candidates, and also when it comes to employee engagement, remote working will be quite an important part of the employee experience. So we already have a question, so I will get back to you later, Barbara, on that question. So it's a good question. Yeah, thank you. So remote working here to stay, right? So we think it will be here to stay. I think remote working will not completely go away. However, because of the data that we've saw, right? So policy procedure, we believe that there are some elements of improvement that can be done when it comes to remote working policy and procedures. And also the how of remote working. How is remote working done? More specifically related to how managers manage people when it comes to remote working. We think that there's a lot of work that can be done. Because at the end of the day, remote working is more than just a technological improvement. Depending on what kind of company that you work for, what kind of organization that you work for, remote working can be a specific culture change that involve a lot of mindset change, and also they involve a lot of upskilling as well when it comes to leadership and management. And we've seen that because a survey that we've seen, a bit of research that we've seen, what are some of the issues that Generation Z experience when it comes to remote working? Like, what are the biggest complaints from them when it comes to remote working? Is two things, right? It's communication, is the nuance of managing people remotely, which is probably there's a bit of a different skill set involved when it comes to managing people face to face. Definitely different skill set and mindset when it comes to managing people virtually, remotely, and face to face. Another thing that we wanted to talk about today when it comes to remote working related to Gen Z is the is the topic of mental well-being, is the impact of isolation that could bring when it comes to remote working. So these are the two things that we think are the future trend that you probably might want to watch out for. Focus that you might want to take when it comes to your workplace remote working, right? So common issue with remote working, again, very rarely is the system or the technology when it comes to remote working. So what are some of the issues Gen Z have with remote work, right? So the first issue that they have, right, the biggest complaint, so this is again from Jobs Korea, the biggest complaint that they have when it comes to remote working, unsurprisingly, is their managers. Because of remote working, again, I mentioned earlier, different skill set, different mindset when it comes to communicating remotely. So a lot of the time they felt that the managers' instructions are unclear and there's a lot more misunderstanding that could happen when it comes to remote working with their managers. So that's the number one complaint, right? Communication related. Second complaint is also communication related. They felt that remote working communication became a lot more one way, where the manager is just transmitting a lot of information without giving the employee enough time for to give them some feedback. And also there's a lot less two-way communication when it comes to remote working. A lot of the time it's just bam, 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 either through email, either through video conferencing, or either through instant messengers. Communication becomes a lot more one way. A third issue that they have when it comes to remote working is they're finding that working remotely, they are a little bit limited when it comes to company information. They find that they were not able to get as much information either through the company itself or through people that they work with or through teams from another department, simply because they are working from home. They feel like that they're receiving less information than before. And this is not surprising to us because one of the, I think we looked at some statistic that show that, I think maybe my numbers are wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me, Laura. I think about 60 to 70% of new employee in 2020 were in the induction of the orientation, the induction of the company were done online, as versus to actually being into the office. And a lot of the employees have, since they have worked in the new company, they have not set foot in the office. So this is definitely an issue when it comes to being having less exposure when it comes to company information and it comes to the news and update from the organization. And the final thing that they have an issue with when it comes to remote working is the fact of isolation. If you have new employee who graduated in 2020, right? Let's say a lot of companies have 신입사원, right? 신입사원, new employee who just graduated, fresh graduated in 2020. Then you would know that your new employee probably spent the last year of the college remote learning. Correct number, thanks, Lon. So what that means is your employee who just graduated, joined your company this year or last year, 2020, they were isolated since before they joined your company because university in Korea were remote learning for the majority of the pandemic. So isolation is a huge key, is a huge issue for some of these new Gen Z employee in your company. And these are things that you need to take into consideration if remote working is something that you wanted to implement it for a longer term, right? And for the particular top 3 issues, our view on it is sometimes managers, leaders might need to relearn communication. I know relearn maybe is a bit of a drastic term, but know for the fact that remote working, remote communications and remote managing is a very different animal, as I said earlier. And if these numbers, when it comes to policies and guideline, if this less than 10% or less than 16% of non-face-to-face reporting when it comes to policies and procedures if we take that into consideration, then that means that a lot of the time managers not have a set of guidelines or procedures when it comes to how to remote manage their employees, how to remote manage their teams. And that is quite alarming if you think about it that way, because if your majority of the work is done remotely, then it actually makes a lot of sense for your managers to learn how to manage people remotely, and to give them a set of guideline on what are some of the things that you should be doing and what are some of the things you should not be doing when it comes to remote working. And in this particular scenario, we like to think that like remote working guidelines need to be in place. Remote working policy need to be in place for remote working to be successful, and including the fact to how to communicate, how to work, and how to lead people, right? So when I talk about relearning communications, it's about how to have effective meeting management when it comes to online meeting versus offline meeting. What are some of the things that you should be doing when it comes to online meetings, when it comes to conducting online meetings, right? And it's true that managers are finding it difficult to remote manage employee, and it's quite interestingly, millennial managers particularly struggle with this. I'll show you a little bit of data Deloitte have done. Deloitte has a little bit of research that Deloitte came up with, which surprises us a little bit, but it actually does make sense to a certain extent. And when it comes to company informations, and there need to be a much better internal communications in place, right? So no longer you can just, you need to think of beyond email when it comes to remote working, more than just email, more than just instant messengers, right? Internal communication needs to go beyond that. If you look at the Gen Z social media consuming patterns, then you have noticed that a lot of the time they don't rely on reading. They don't read to absorb informations and to learn, right? So you need to take those into consideration. And leaders need to be constantly measuring like the communication impact, right? They need to be getting feedback on, did I get my message across, right? Just because somebody say yes, yes, yes on a video call or nodding constantly in front of the skills doesn't mean that they're necessary, understood, or have a clear alignment on what you want from them. As is shown with some of the struggle that Gen Z have when it comes to their manager, is misunderstanding do happen a lot when it comes to remote working. So this is a bit of a research that we took from the Deloitte Millennial and Gen Z report in 2020. What they found is they talked about, they asked Gen Z and millennials on how they feel about remote working. Most of the things that they do agree with, but one thing that is quite interesting is millennial believe that they need more trainings and education when it comes to working remotely more effectively. So rather than Gen Z, so Gen Z actually don't think that they need as much training when it comes to remote working. So our speculation on that is because a lot of millennials, we talked about this in our other webinar, a lot of the millennials are becoming managers themselves. A lot of the millennials are stepping into leadership position, or even in some organization executive positions. So they are experiencing this managerial pain when it comes to remote working. And also the fact that Gen Z tend to be a lot more digital ready when it comes to using remote technology, while some older millennial is not as digital natives when it comes to remote working. So we do believe that when it comes to remote managing people, there need to be an awareness on remote working is different when it comes for managers. And also there need to be a plan to upskill your managers on how to remote manage the people. There should be guideline and policy to help them, to guide them on how can they effectively manage the people if they're using a remote system. And when it comes to internal communication, right? So we borrow this from a communication firm. This particular spectrum that we really like is if email, instant messengers, and team meeting is all you use, then you probably is not communicating using all the spectrum available, right? So this depending on what is your message when it comes to communication, depending what is your purpose, right? Is it a more top-down to bottom, top-down approach? Do you just want to go one-way communicate? Then these are some of the things that you can use. Email is just one channel that you can use, right? Town hall meetings, if you want it to be more intrusive, if you want them to take action right now, then some of the communication channel that you can use is quite different to if you want a behavior change, if you want a culture change, or if you want to inform, or if you want to collaborate. So these are all the channels that you can potentially be using when it comes to remote working, right? So again, I think we talked about this I think in one of our first webinar. Feel free to visit it again. Is when it comes to absorbing information. Gen Z have a very, very different ways of receiving and absorbing information, and a lot of the things that they use is doesn't involve using text, doesn't involve reading text. So it's something for you to consider when it comes to remote working and how you want to communicate with your workforce. Is this the right kind of medium? Do you want to engage? Do you want to collaborate? Or do you want immediate action? Or is there something that to constantly remind them, something that should be popping up on a constant basis, right? So this is quite a useful spectrum that we wanted to introduce to you. And again, everything will be shared with you after the webinar, so you don't need to worry about missing the screenshot while I change the slides. So yeah, so remote working guideline, we do think this is important to relearn communication, and also the fact that better internal communication channels need to be developed, right, when it comes to remote working. Go beyond email, go beyond instant messengers, and go beyond the team meeting itself. So that's communication of remote working. We felt that focus need to be put a little bit more on. Another thing that we wanted to shine a spotlight on is the fact that isolation is a thing, as I said earlier, particularly with Gen Z who just graduated, that they've been isolated for the better part of the last year of college, and also the fact that then isolation could have an impact on mental well-being, and also the fact that Gen Z view on mental well-being is quite important, and we felt that there is opportunity to look at that as an engagement tool, and also as a way to as a way of reward and recognition as well. So this is a little bit of a story that we found from Blind. So Blind is a review website where people can share their work stories based on the company. So this particular story, the story that we found last year, is this person, like in the beginning, working from home is great, everything's great, but then isolation starting to set in, where that person cannot leave their home. They have less contact with the co-workers apart from looking at the screen. It's driving them nuts. So mental well-being is definitely something that you need to address, as if you're looking to expand remote working into the workplace. And something that Teaneilu 20s Lab. So this 20s Lab is a research agency focusing on Millennial Gen Z in Korea. They find that 70% of Korean Gen Z believes that it is important to manage the personal mental well-being in 2021. So that gave us a bit of a insight on, like, it is important to address isolation of remote working, particularly to mental health being, and how company can actually give Gen Z mental well-being support as a way to engage them and as a way to attract them as potential talent as well. So definitely there's an opportunity to rethink mental well-being as an engagement tool and as a benefit. So in the same research done by 20s Lab, they asked Korean Gen Z, so how do you manage your mental well-being in 2021, right? So this is the question that has been posed to the Generation Z. And these are the results, right? So the result is quite interesting to us. So how do you manage your mental well-being? Top choice is through food and beverage. So that include ordering food ordering food, delicious food, or eating out in a nice restaurant, or either through drinking alcohol or other beverages. So that is top choice. Second choice of manage the mental well-being is through entertainment content. So that includes watching content online, watching movies, playing games, going on YouTube to watch their favorite content providers. The third thing that they do when it comes to managing their mental well-being is to conversation with people, with their friends, with the family, with people that they trust. And the fourth one is practicing mindfulness through meditations or through other means of achieving a better mental state. Interesting thing for us for us actually from RDI to saw is only 6.4 actually have seek professional help, professional support when it comes to mental well-being. So it's not a high number, but what gave us a bit of a surprise, a bit of a shock is in the same survey, actually close to 75% of Korean Gen Z would actually like to seek professional support when it comes to mental health being. So they would like to get the help. The help that they most likely want, that they most prefer is through one-on-one counseling, online or offline assessment on their mental well-being, and also online educational content that they can watch to help themselves manage the mental well-being a little bit better. So there is definitely opportunity for you to engage a Gen Z workforce or to attract Gen Z candidate when it comes to mental well-being as a support that you can provide together with the remote working, and also together with the remote working ways of working that you wanted to implement, right? So what we meant is when it comes to support that you can provide as a company, you can provide the comfort commodities that we talked about that they would like, and also combine that with professional support that they would want, but they might not have the opportunity to experience yet. So what we meant is all the stuff that they like when it comes to help them maintain or manage the mental well-being: food and drinks, entertainment content, conversation, practice mindfulness, combined with the fact that you're providing them with professional support. These are ways that you can further engage your Gen Z employee when it comes to their mental well-being. So to give you some example, what some companies have actually done in other countries. So Deloitte Brazil in Brazil, so they provide some, especially in 2020 and 2021, so they provide telemedicine service, 24-hour support, where they have an application where the employees can talk about the medical concern or even the mental health concern with somebody online. They have a meditation app to help the employees to reduce daily anxiety. And they also provide the educational content that they're looking for, right? They have a live Q&A and webinar to answer some of the questions and share knowledge when it comes to mental well-being for the employees as part of the employee assistance program, or as part of the well-being program that they provide to engage the employee, to provide them with some support. And also as a reward recognition as well. ING in France, they provide some of those commodity comfort. They provide yoga, fitness, and nutrition classes as a benefit to employees. And they also provide some distant learning. This is related to remote working, right? It's providing distant learning to train managers on how to manage remote teams, to give them a much better idea on how to manage the people better. And there's also policies and guidelines on how to deal with team members' isolations for managers to look at as well. So there's definitely opportunities when it comes to benefits, guidelines, trainings, and all when it comes to mental well-being in 2021. And a survey done in 2021 by the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans, IFEBP, I think that's the acronym. They find that 68% of companies worldwide are planning to increase the emphasis on mental health offering over the next 2 years. And for them, the recommendations to success, and particularly in a culture, the recommendation is if your if there's not a culture of seeking mental health, then these are some of the things that they would recommend. The key to success is first is to get the employee excited about the resource available, either through internal communications or through events. And second thing that they realize they recommend is communicate the value this benefits can bring to the employee's work and also personal life year round, right? It's not just let's say you have a program that provide benefits for employees' well-being. It's not enough just to have a bit of okay, we have this event, this is great, enjoy. It's important to raise the awareness. It's important to have a year-round communication with the employees to raise that awareness and to educate them on the benefits, on these values that these kind of benefits can bring to their personal well-being and also to their work as well. And these are two of the key to success that this IFEBP recommended if you wanted to implement a well-being program within your organization. So the summary of today is really, we believe that remote working can stay. I think it will stay, especially because as a employee experience, this is particularly important to Generation Z, who believes that having the options to remote work is essential when it comes to the work experience. However, we think that much better guidelines and supporting procedure needs to be in place when it comes to remote working, how communication should be conducted, how managers should be managing their people, and also how leaders should be communicating with their employee when it comes to work itself. How can team remote work better? Organizations should look at the communication review when it comes to review the communication channels when it comes to remote working. Are they using all the channels effectively? Is the message being delivered clearly? Is there many misunderstanding when it comes to communication, right? Are we just using limited channels, email, instant messengers, and team meetings? Are there other channels that you could be using when it comes to communication channels? The fourth and fifth thing is more to do with the isolations of remote working can bring and the general awareness of mental well-being that Korean Gen Z have, and how well-being should be mental well-being should be a focus of employee engagement and also employee benefits on both professional help and also the comfort commodity that a organization can provide when it comes to employee benefit itself. So these are some of the things that I have for you today. Everything will be shared with you. This recording will be shared with you as well. So that's all from me. So I will have some questions that I can answer. But meanwhile, if you have any questions, feel free to add on. So I have a question from Barbara. To what extent do Gen Z and Millennial differ between countries? Oh, yeah. So the difference between so Korean Gen Z and Millennial and European Gen Z and Millennial. So I think the distinctive difference between Korean Gen Z and Millennial is so in Korean Millennial Gen Z is funny how like medias and how research tend to group them together. They call them MZ, Millennial and Gen Z. However, there's a very distinction between Millennial and Gen Z in Korea, where in the language itself, like Gen Z is more people under 20, and they call it 10대, 20대, 30대. So to the people in the 10, 20s, people in the teenage year, and people in the 30s, people in the 40s. But between the difference between the Asia and Europe, I would say Korean Gen Z probably a little bit more comparing to European Gen Z. Our Korean Gen Z probably a little bit more extremely tech savvy. I think in the first webinar, we mentioned that Gen Z in Korea are quite active in the sense that they are not afraid to take proactive action. And there is a big shift in Korean Gen Z mindset on how relationship is being seen. That is very, very different from the millennial as well, Korean millennial. So for traditional Korean relationship relate depending a lot on the on traditional like families, school that you go to, and also the teams that you work with. So traditional relationship more formed by the structure that is involved with you, right? So you're more friend with the people that you go to school with. You're more friend with your people that you spend a lot of time with. So with Korean Gen Z, there's a big change in how relationship being seen. Is they, I think, what's the word, Lawrence? Concept chin, is that the name? That's the Korean term. I might have pronounced it wrong. Where yes, so where the relationship is more because of they spend so much time online. How they form relationships more based on the interest base now, more based on the topic that they're curious in. So a lot of the time they will have communities of friends that is based on not based on the school that they go with. They could be or the company that they work with. It could be based on the online community that they are involved in. Could be a particular type of things that they enjoy doing. Could be a hobby, or could be a particular movie or topic. So I would say there's a big change in Korean Gen Z when it comes to relationship, that no longer they are bound by traditional boundaries, but they're more likely to be breaking those boundaries when it comes to relationship, more concept related, more interest related when it comes to relationship. So I think that is a very, very unique Gen Z characteristic of Korean Gen Z. I think in the workplace, there's some challenge because usually traditional relationship in workplace is people work together, tend to have a sort of, they expect kind of relationship going on. Then they expect to have certain amount of interactions or certain amount of, certain amount of relationship within the team itself. And there could be some mis-expectation where manager would expect the Gen Z to, hey, why are you not forming relationship with our team? Where the mis-expectation could be that the Gen Z don't see commonality in the team anymore. They don't think that I need to form a relationship here because there's nothing I have in common with these people apart from work itself, right? So there's some elements of to align. There's some challenges, but at the same time, I think there's opportunities that actually gives a lot more opportunities to collaborate, breaking down silos. What I mean is it could give companies an opportunity to give employees a opportunity to group together based on interests. As for example, back in the day, so the example is, so traditional relationship is if you work for this team, you work for team A, then your relationship form with team A. If you work at team B, then your relationship form with team B. So there could be an element of silos or competition even going on. However, because of how Gen Z see relationship, Korean Gen Z see relationship quite different, you could break down those barriers a lot more easier. Let's say team A and team B, whoever is interested in Excel, we can form a community of practice of Excel. Then Gen Z is more likely to say, hey, I'm interested in Excel. I'm interested in creating macros in Excel, for example. So I'm join this community. Even you from team B, team C, I can form a relationship with you. I don't mind that at all, right? So I do feel that there is opportunity when it comes to this particular unique characteristics of Korean Gen Z. So I would say that is a unique characteristics of Gen Z when it comes to a career specifically. That they are very, very online savvy, and a lot of the interaction, a lot of the relationship are formed online. Yeah. I hope that understand the questions a little bit. Yeah. So if you have another question, any other question, please let me know. So if not, then so make if not, then again, all of our previous webinars are on our YouTube channel. On our YouTube channel, we have our webinar. We also have other leadership management related content that we wanted to grow our channel. A lot of our information is on LinkedIn, but we are slowly migrating some of our content to YouTube as well. So be on the watch out for more content coming out on our YouTube channel. But again, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn as well. Every week we have some news, trends regarding to Korean HR, regarding to Millennial and Gen Z in this country, and generally just work and leadership as well. So feel free to find us on LinkedIn. Out there worldwide is you should be able to find us. And yeah, and that's all I have for you today. If you have other questions, let us know. And you should be receiving the recording and all, as well as the this particular presentation within the next couple of days. So thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to stick around for a bit. If you want to have a conversation, feel free to stick around. If not, we can be reached on our website and on our LinkedIn and YouTube channel as well. So thank you for your time on this Wednesday. Hopefully I look forward to seeing you again next month. And if you have any particular topic, feedback that you would like to give to us, then please feel free to share that with us. We would love to hear from you. So, thank you.